Pacific Nations Cup, round number 2, the second game after Samoa and Tonga played the other day. USA against Canada, another kind of matchup of two traditional rivals, and it is the US at home that get the job done. 28 points to 15. You'd have to say Kati, with his kicking game, was able to put the Canadians largely on the back foot, and for a long period kind of controlled the territorial game. They managed to create a few kind of X-factor scoring opportunities, and the Canadians kept knocking on the ball, and their line-out also left a little bit to be desired. But kind of like last week's game against Japan, when Canada can actually get a few strings together and not knock the ball on, they do look half decent, despite the fact that they seem to have the worst coach in international rugby. He doesn't knock the ball on. That was down to the players. They did get the first scoring of the game as we go through these kind of key events and stats. Welcome along. Nelson managed to slot a almost 50-meter penalty for Canada, which was pleasing for the Canadians from a breakdown penalty. So 3 points to 0 away from home. That's a good way to get things started on like 3 minutes. But then 3 minutes later, the Americans managed to get one back through Kati. Breakdown penalty for that one too. So 3 points apiece. The referee being pretty strict, I guess, on both sides of that area of the game. First try comes through Mooneyham. He gets 2. Probably could have had 3 if he'd been able to catch another kick. But interesting one in that it's kind of a punishment for a Canadian mistake. Like Canada had won a turnover, but the kick clear was pretty poor. America just ran it straight back at them. Boney managed to get a great pass to Mooneyham, who's able to run that support line, and 8 points to 3. You feel like if Canada had just kicked a nice clearance kick out, it might have been a different story. But 8 points to 3, and the conversion got timed out. Some of these kickers are still getting used to the 60-second timer. We've seen it a few times this weekend, and this was another one, this time for Luke Cardi. 14 minutes, second try for Mooneyham. Again, it's a little bit poor from Canada. This time again, they choose not to kick out initially. They try to run it out of their own 22. So their first clearance is kind of poor. Then, it's like a clearance under pressure anyway, when it could have been kind of a clean clearance. And then the US with a line-out move, they get themselves some advantage. They spin it wide. Cardi with a nice wide ball. And Mooneyham's able to get his second. So 13 points to 3. It's all going the USA way. Like, they're getting breakdown penalties. Cardi's boots putting the Canadians on the back foot. He's put them back into their own corner at one point. It looks like it's going to be an absolute rout. However, again, like the Canadians seem to like being about 10 points down. When they get to about 10 points down, they seem to fire up. And they managed to win a couple of penalties of their own and applied some pressure to the US guys. They had a nice line-out move of their own. Inside pop ball to a on-rushing Nick Ben, and he's able to go over for their first try of the game. Missed conversion, but 13 points to 8. Suddenly looking like a bit more game on. Nelson gets tackled in the air when he's jumping for a loose ball. It's not from a kick, so it doesn't get carded. I feel like if it's from a kick, it's probably a bit of hot water. But those ones where it's like a bouncing ball or a line-out move or a pass that's kind of gone high and the guy just jumps, they don't tend to get pinged as harshly, and that one is the case here. But Canada can't do anything with that penalty. Then Canada on 37 minutes, they knock the ball on in their own half, and the US punish them. They go through a few phases. Cardi puts a dinking kick through for himself. A bit of confidence from him. He gathers his own kick. Mitch Wilson with the support line. 18 points to 8 with that try. Back to that kind of 10-point lead. We go into the sheds with that 18-8 scoreline. The US have controlled the territory, 56%. They've got slightly more possession, 51%. They've had a ton more carries, 71 to 38. 5 line breaks to 2. Double the run meters, not quite, 467 to 249. Slightly under half, but over half, under half. Half. Canada has got slightly over half the Americans. That's how that works. I've been up since 3 o'clock in the morning watching the South African All Blacks game. But this is my last game for the day. And yeah, this Canadian lineout has been struggling. And that would kind of continue throughout the game. Second half also started pretty poorly for Canada. They're knocking on more ball. They're getting pinged at scrum time. And then the loose head prop, Martinez, cynical play. Hand on the ball at the breakdown. The TMO spots it because the referee doesn't. The US punished with another penalty, 21 points to 8. But then Sears Duru comes on, who's been playing for Canada for a few years now, and manages to win a scrum penalty. So at least that gets Canada out of dodge. Maybe an attacking chance. No, because they knocked the ball on not too long later. And then 54 minutes, we get USA's final score, which will be a little bit concerning that they kind of had Canada on the ropes. They got them 14 men. They finally punished the yellow card. Initially, it's not given. It's a line-out move. You see Lopetti with a big old line break. He goes close, and then Pifoletti with the kind of pick and go looks to be held up. The referee calls it held up, but the TMO gets on the horn. And eventually, after they find the footage, they ruled that it has hit the line. So, yeah, it's a try given, 28 points to 8. We now have a 20-point lead. Yeah, the USA finally punishing that yellow card. But that's their final scoring, man. So that part will be, as I say, kind of quite disappointing. And again, the Canadians seem to kind of get fired up from here. They managed to get one through Coates from kick return, a few direct carries. Finally, they don't knock the ball on. They break a few tackles. It's still a bit loose. I'm sure they did drop the ball, but it went backwards. So certainly not clean. It's awkward, but they finish it. 28 points to 15. That's the final scoring, but I do feel like the Canadians should have had more. They had Lesage, who kind of knocked the ball on right close to the US goal line, and they were essentially camped on the US goal line for the kind of last few minutes of the game. I mean, the US scrum was looking good, but like even on turnover ball, the Canadians tried to hit them back. Of course, they finished it with a knock on, but yeah, the Canadians looked good in patches, but knocked on way too much ball. Yeah, so not going to win many games that way, basically. Final stats. Possession finishes 52-48 to the US, but the territory actually finishes 50-50. So the Canadians really kind of managed to kind of eke that back in the second half. But turnovers conceded, 16 by the Canadians. I mean, Americans are not a heck of a lot better, 11, but it's still better enough. And the line out, 93% from the US, 81% from the Canadians. Like 81% is not terrible, but it's borderline. It's not very good. You'd ideally like a bit more than that. At least kind of mid to high 80s, basically. 90s is solid. Line breaks 7-4 to the US. Like I mentioned, they were able to kind of create those more X-factor opportunities. And yeah, their kicking game, they kicked 26 times to 19. I really think, especially in the first half, that was keeping the Canadians really scrambling. Individuals, Nick Baird on the wing for Canada has 11 carries, has a couple of clean breaks, scores a try. Lucas Rumble, the captain, 11 carries, beats a couple of defenders. Ethan Fryer, he gets 17 tackles on the flank for the Canadians. Mooneyham, 2 tries, 3 clean breaks. Pretty solid shift from him. Tavita Lopetti beats 4 defenders in the midfield. Paddy Ryan, 21 tackles from him. That's a pretty Herculean shift. But yeah, the Canadians have played their first 2, so they now take a break. And then the US guys travel to Japan for next week's game of Pacific Nations Cup action. If you like the Pacific Nations Cup videos, do leave us a comment that you like them. Put a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel. These videos don't get the kind of views, obviously, that the All Blacks in South Africa get, but I love watching them. It's good to see some players that I don't normally get to see that much. And with the World Cup being expanded, you can bet your bottom dollar some of these guys are going to be going to World Cup. So it'll be good to know kind of what form they're in going into the competitions. Yes, take care, folks. I'm going to go have a nap because, as I said, I've been up for a few hours and it's time for a wee rest. But you guys take care, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.